Are you able to hear me, Carl?
I am. Does this sound good?
Yes, it does.
All right, great.
We'll start in a few minutes.
Thank you, Laura.
Oh, really?
Or who manages the mosquito control? I can't remember. I think I'm pretty sure it's Public Works, but I don't know. Oh, you don't think it's Public Works? Oh. Oh, okay. Oh, they have to, yeah. Bugs are horrible. It's ridiculous. This might be the worst year I've ever seen. I mean, people, you just watch outside. It might be the worst year. I don't know what it is.
Okay. That's behind me.
Okay, I think it's time to get started. So we are here for our work session for June 3rd, and we're going to talk about the construction manager at risk, and then the 1200 locus update, and I'll turn it over to our city manager, and he'll turn it over to Steve Neighbor.
Actually.
So if you want to go ahead and get started, Steve.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Steve Neighbor, city engineer, also City of Des Moines resident. I've got a whole bunch of folks here with me who have even more expertise than me in this topic. I think I'm just speaking because I have the loudest voice, and so I've got folks from our engineering team here, and Tom Block. Also got Jake Knutson, who I'm very proud, one of our civil engineers. He has been kind of one of the main folks in leading some of these projects and getting this, which is new to public entities, construction manager at risk, moving. He's been handling a lot of our building projects, so very proud of his effort. I've got Jim Hoff, our assistant city manager's office. We've got folks from our facilities team. We've also got some leadership here, and I appreciate their attendance as well, from Ryan Companies, McGuff, and J.E. Dunn as well with us. I appreciate them coming as well. And so we've got a number of building projects underway, and so our city manager and team thought that it'd be a good time to kind of give an update, an overview of the construction manager at risk process. And so I'm going to cover again, give that overview of the construction manager at risk process and the project delivery methods that are used in public improvements, our selection process for construction manager at risk, and then as well kind of go through some specific topics and questions that folks have brought up for the process. And then we're going to give a quick update on the projects that are going. And if there are any questions, again, after that, appreciate bringing those forward. And again, if I can't answer them, we've got a number of folks here who have a lot of expertise in this. So. So this is the typical design, bid, build process, this flow chart here. This is kind of the org chart, if you will, and this is what we've traditionally followed as a city for doing public improvements. It's what we will continue to follow for horizontal projects such as roads, bridges, and sewers. Again, the city puts together construction plans, does the design, and then goes through the bidding process where we advertise and open bids in a public hearing, a public bid opening, and then have a hearing. All is outlined in Chapter 26 of the Iowa Code. And then once the City Council has that hearing and awards a contract, then we have the contractor, the general contractor on board. So again, keep this in mind. The general contractor gets a few weeks to see the plans and then submit a bid, and then they're on board, and then they have the contracts with the subcontractors directly. The city does not have any, is not privy to, and does not have any, is not privy to those contracts between the general contractor and subcontractor in this case. And so this is the org chart for our typical design, bid, build.
So Steve, just clarification. You've got 3 subcontractors, and I completely understand that. So now we're saying that those subcontractors can sub it out to another subcontractor. Now, can they turn around and sub it out to somebody else too?
That's always been the case. Yep, they could have sub of subcontractors. So, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And it should be noted, this is, I would assume, just an example. There would be many more than 3
Oh yeah,
subcontractors.
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Very correct. Yep.
But
Yep.
would there be many more subs of the subcontractors and maybe even possible another one underneath this that you didn't put in here?
There could be a scenario where you have a real specialty trait where they might have a sub of a sub. Yeah, but yeah, but yep, Councilman, you're correct. This is just a sample word chart to kind of show if you get more complex projects, there would be a lot more subcontractors. So
This is the one that I think it probably has brought up the most concern is when, okay, the subcontractors, and then we go down to the subs of the subcontractors. Then the issue is that the payroll verification. And I think that's probably the biggest issue that most of us have up here. And so when we do that, are we asking the general to make sure that they're all being paid adequately through state and federal laws?
We've developed a special provision that we can request payroll. Now that the contractors can decline to provide information, especially if they feel information is confidential or.
Yeah, we're not asking for any social security numbers.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. But we have requested payroll before on projects to show that they're
So that's
being paid.
part of our process with the general contractor, that they know that there is a possibility that they might need to provide us the sub of the subcontractors or even the next step below.
That's correct. Well, in the proposals and the bid documents, there is a special provision that says that the city may ask for this information. We don't always,
Right.
But it's in the actual proposal that they bid on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
The same as Joe's. It says in the contract that the subcontractor, but are they saying that if they sub, sub it out, if it goes down 3 or 4 levels, they still have to provide, if we ask for payroll verification? And how do we know that we're really getting tradespeople? How do we know we're not, I mean, we've seen some of our recent builds that have not gone very well. And what kind of, I just want to have assurances that we're hiring qualified people and that they're being paid adequately.
So I think one thing that you'll see with the CMR process, there is more of a qualification-based type selection with this process. So that will play into that concern, and that's
And
why
will
we're here
we
to.
see that in the development agreements? I mean, will we see that in the bid paperwork?
We will not. And I'll describe that process in a little bit. It's kind of hard to, and so I'll go into that a little bit here. In terms of, I guess, the question of trades, the law is very clear that we cannot be asking for or requiring that there be any union affiliation. It actually spells it
And it doesn't
out.
have to be union affiliated. I just want people that are qualified.
Yep.
I mean, are we getting day laborers that come in and,
I have not seen any records or evidence of that. So in any city project. So of that. So.
I just want qualified people, somebody who understands what they're doing.
And that's why I'm very excited that the state has opened the door to this process of construction manager at risk, because that is what they call best value selection, and so it's not just taking low bidder. There's qualifications for it. So, yep. So. In the our new animal control building, we moved to a delivery method that has been always allowed, or at least as far as I've been in the industry, it's called construction manager as advisor. And the name fits it because that's what we are hiring as an advisor. They also call it construction manager as agent. So in the case of the animal control building, we also had our design team. They prepared the plans and specs, but during the design, we hired a general contractor based on qualifications to be our advisor. So they're like a consultant, is what they are. They do not have contracts with those what we normally would see as subcontractors, but the contractors performing the work. They are what it is. They are an advisor and a consultant. In the animal control building, just like a design bid build, we had, as the city, as the owner, had the contracts with those contractors. So the animal control building, what we actually did is we bid out per Chapter 26, 13 different contracts. So in other words, to build that building, contracts such as HVAC, landscaping, the structure work, electrical packages. So we bid out 13 packages, and then we had our construction manager as advisor be our professionals and guide through the process. And in my own opinion, I think that project was extremely successful. It was an incredibly complex building, and I'll be honest, I didn't know it was going to be that. I didn't realize that the complexity of the HVAC systems for a building that has dogs and cats and actually a veterinary clinic that we treat like a hospital, and so I'm happy we use this method to build that building. So I guess to be blunt.
But this isn't how we're going to do going forward. The new fire station that Ryan Company's here, and the Franklin County new city hall.
That's correct, because
We're not going to use this. We're going to use the other one.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, to be honest, we use this because at the time of that building, the construction manager at risk was not allowed by our state law.
Oh, okay.
So we did this, to be honest with you, kind of as Councilmember Westergaard alluded to, because we had challenges with some other building projects with the design bid low bid, low responsive bid process, we went to this to get basically a general contractor as an advisor that was selected by qualifications.
So when we go forward with the new buildings, like you said, we bid out 13 different agenda items.
Yep.
Will that be how the CMR
Nope.
will work? We'll just hire whoever we're going to do. I think we've already hired Ryan Company.
Yep.
Fire station.
Yep.
So it'll just be one bid of, it's not going to exceed X amount of dollars. Is that how that's going to work, or how is that going to work then?
Yep, that's absolutely correct. Councilman Gatto is right. This is and I put up on the board here now, the construction manager at risk process, where we actually hire by best value is what Chapter 26A. And again, I can't thank Kathy Vanderpool and Jeff Lester and that team as well. We've been one of the ones. I know the airport did a project with this, but quite frankly, as a city, this is one of the first city projects. So I can't thank Kathy enough. Oh, she's in the crowd too, so I get to call her out and point her out for all the work that she's done with a new process. And not only that, we got 3 buildings we're doing that way. And so Chapter 26A. Best value, which means it's not defined in Chapter 26A, but essentially best value is it's not going to be the low bid. So it's not just low bid, lowest responsible bidder. There is a qualification-based selection process for 26A here. And as the councilman mentioned, this process, we have one contract with the construction manager at risk that we hire, and then they are responsible for following Chapter 26A, and then they can use a qualification process themselves to select subcontractors. And again, it is spelled out what they can do in Chapter 26A, and it's also spelled out in 26A what we're allowed to do from a selection process, and I'll kind of get into that here. But again, in this case, the construction manager at risk, they are both the advisor and the contractor. So that this is a huge step. This is better than the CM advisor, because they are the ones who, are at risk for delivering the project. So they have the direct relationship with those contractors and suppliers. They have the full responsibility of the construction labor, materials, and equipment. And then they deliver the project with a guaranteed maximum price, and I'll show some information on that in a little bit here. And again, I do want to state this: the Chapter 26A does state that it does not apply to highway, bridge, and culvert and sewer projects. So we cannot do this for our roadways, and our horizontal projects. And again, this all came July 1st of 2022 with Senate File 183. That this method was opened up to Iowa cities. Yeah. And this is another highlight here. And I know there's a lot on the screen here, but there's 2 example schedules. The top one is a sample construction manager at risk schedule. The bottom one is the typical traditional design bid build. Okay, and remember I mentioned before with the design bid build, right? Our contractors, we publicly post the proposals and bid documents, and they get like 3 to 4 weeks to see them, and then submit a bid, and then we have once the council awards, we have a contractual relationship, and they got to deliver the project. Okay, so you can kind of see the challenges with that, right? I mean, they get 3 to 4 weeks to submit this price, and so. They're not involved in the design, and then they can't even start doing anything until they have an awarded contract. And we know in building, especially in our building projects, when we got steel and electrical equipment that have long lead times, that's a challenge from a scheduling standpoint. When we look up at the top schedule at the construction manager at risk, we're bringing the construction manager at risk on in the schematic design phase is kind of the typical time frame. So that's when I talk about they're acting as an advisor. That's a huge advantage and I'll have another slide that shows some of the services they provide in pre-construction services, such as value engineering and constructability, and how do we package, things to expedite our projects. And just looking at the examples, we are seeing, months of time savings on our projects because, as you all know, you all awarded or approved a supplemental or drawing a blank on an early GMP to expedite and order some electrical equipment to get that lead time started. Again, so that's where you save months off of the schedule. So guaranteed maximum price. And so that's, and I got a slide that'll cover that, but that is ultimately when we get through the processes that are defined in 26A that our construction manager at risk will go through, then we will approve a guaranteed maximum price, and that is the price that they are saying that they will build the project for. So this is just kind of the process we have to follow in Chapter 26A. We start with a notice of intent. Public entities must give notice and disclose that we're going to use this process before we even go out for the request for statement of qualifications. So we have to issue a notice of intent, and then after a 14-day period, then we issue a statement of qualifications or request for statement of qualifications. The statement of qualifications, Chapter 26A, is fairly specific on what we can include. Okay, and when we ask for statement of qualifications, we can ask for contractors' experience undertaking projects of similar size and scope, either public or private, past performance, safety record, and I'll get into a little more on that, proposed personnel, and proposed methodology. Okay.
You would also look at if there's any legal issues with some of the companies, obviously, if there's any liens or any other issues that they've had through other projects that they've done this. You would use that as part of the interview process.
Well, that's not listed as what we can ask for in 26A, but it could be considered under that level.
I just want to clarify that we are going to do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that seems pretty important.
If there were issues with, yeah.
I mean, that's a past performance issue. Sure. So how were we?
I would think that would fall under that, and certainly we have been privileged with, since we've been doing this process, we've been getting responses from, I think one of the projects we had 13 responses. I mean, certainly if we've had past performance challenges, right, then that would play into where how they rank.
I just want to make sure that is part of our interview process. That is a past performance that we obviously should be looking at for, I don't care if we have 13 or 100. I mean, you need to look at that as you're sitting down interviewing, and I would hope that you would be. That is, like Josh and everyone else, I think we all agree that is part of past performances.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I would think that, I would hope that you would
right. Yes.
take that into consideration.
Yes.
And I know we have two reputable, contractors here that I think but just going forward,
right.
If we're going to use this process, that's got to be one of your questions.
Right. I mean, we have a whole selection committee that's involved in these, and again, we have to. Yeah, we're going to. We're confident we're picking firms that do not have the challenges that we're kind of talking about here. So.
Okay. And if I could, real quick, I think you're going along the same path. It can be a consideration, but it should not be an automatic disqualifier, because obviously lawsuits, we've seen some of our own that don't warrant changes necessarily. So
I think it would reflect on the scoring that you're doing as you go through the process.
Correct.
It's not an automatic you get thrown out, but it should reflect your scoring.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah. And again, I think we're very happy and confident with the three firms, as you mentioned, Councilman, that we've got doing these projects. And just to give an example, we talk about experience. One of them, just to call out, the Reichardt Community Recreation Center. One of the criteria was constructing a pool. And so we want a GC that has done this before, right? Because those are complex things to build. We don't want, generally our government entities don't want to be dealing with the learning curve, right? And so that's a huge advantage to this process, is the qualification based on experience, right? We don't have that with the design build process. We can get a firm that just has never built a pool before, and we would have no way of arguing. They may say, well, we've done a bunch of buildings before, but then there's not a qualification component to that. So after we evaluate and score the qualifications received, we then go to the request for proposal process, and in that case, we get to see and request what the contractor's fees would be. Again, we don't see that stuff with the design bid build process. So in this case, they actually disclose what their fees are. And again, I want to reiterate, this is called a best value process. It's not defined in Chapter 26A, but it is clearly different than the standard. It's not lowest responsible and responsive bidder. So, sure, everything here. And this is this chart here. Appreciate Tom Block and Jake Knutson. They help put this together. This is our scoring, right? This is how we've scored. So again, you can look at the statement of qualifications, that relevant project experience, past performance, safety record, proposed personnel, and then we go through and score them. And then there's even cost components that we look at. And then the councilman alluded to this. We interview and score the interviews as well. So we have the construction manager at risk proposers bring their team in so we can meet with them and to be honest, literally question them to know that they, right, that's the team we're dealing with, right? We're not getting maybe someone in the back office that's good at putting together proposals. We want to see that the team knows this process as well. And then we go through the selection process and we'll negotiate a contract. And so ultimately, again, it's the same. The council will approve that contract as you have for the three firms.
So is the project manager part of the interview process also?
They better be, otherwise that would not score very well. I mean, okay. Yeah.
So whoever's running the job site will be part of the interview process. The
project manager and then a lot superintendent as well. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, if the team didn't bring them, that certainly would reflect that. Yeah. And I know we say that, but to be honest, we do it. We have a scoring process for selection of professional services for engineering and architecture consultants. Mm-hmm. I haven't had a case in my almost 10 years being here that where a team did not bring the project manager and that interview did not go very well. Let's put it that way. So,
Steve, I have a question. When it talks about statement of qualifications, you talk about safety record.
Yep.
Are you pulling OSHA records? Are you getting information and how can we do that when we don't even know who the subcontractors are going to be?
So what it is as part of the submittal, here are some of the things that we're looking at here from a safety record. It's a documented history of 5 years, including any open closed citations. So they are providing that. I do want to be clear that just by having OSHA inspection reports does not disqualify a construction manager from the process. It does not say that they're not qualified. I would say the biggest thing is the fact that they will provide their own safety plan, and to be honest, the firms that we have on our building projects that we're talking about here, they have a very robust safety program, safety plan, if you will, and they also have something we call an experience, which I say is even more weight, is the experience modification rate, which is actually assigned by the insurance agency, used to calculate workers' compensation rates. And it's based on their historical cost of injuries, future risks. And so the standard is 1, which means, is average. And if they have a few more incidents than if they have more incidents than most, it'll be above 1. Okay. And so just to kind of give an example, some of the firms that we have here with us today, they have an EMR of ranging from 0.42 to 0.62 over the past 5 years. Those are really good scores. So that's really what, what the information is from a safety standpoint.
Can you go back to the last slide for a second?
Probably.
And so the subcontracting process is under that, right?
Nope.
Scored under the interview.
Nope, I apologize. This is the process just for getting the construction manager at risk. The subcontractors are actually, once we have a construction manager at risk on board, they are required to follow Chapter 26A, and then they have selection criteria that tells them what they can use to pre-qualify a pool of consultants. And so just to give you an example, Ryan Companies for Fire Station 4, they're already on board as a CM at risk. They completed the qualification portions on May 23rd, and they've already set that pre-qualifications. They've sent out bid documents to qualified bidders. Bids are due in late June, and there are 63 qualified subcontractors across 22 packages that they're bidding, with most of the packages having at least 3 qualified bidders. So Ryan Companies for Fire Station 4 has already gone through a pre-qualification process to develop pools of qualified subcontractors, and then those subcontractors are going to submit proposals, and then that will be per 26A would be they would select the lower.
Thanks for that detail. That wasn't exactly what I was trying to ask. So on the interview process on this slide, it says subcontracting process, right?
Okay.
If they to show that they understand the subcontracting process for 26A and how will they handle it.
Right. Well, we currently have our post-bid qualification right now, right?
For under Chapter 26, yeah.
Right, and that we've determined that can be used under Chapter 26.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that we could ask about, whether or not they would follow that at this stage in the process, right?
So that is tied to Chapter 26, and so it's and I have a slide on that later. Here, let me just go right to it.
We'll just cut right to the chase.
Yeah. So it doesn't apply to 26A. I mean, using the construction manager at risk delivery method, we already are asking for those past performance safety things, the things that we're asking in the post-bid questionnaire. So of our general contractors. So
well, the language is still the same, right? They have to choose a responsible bidder themselves, right? That is a piece of what they're doing.
that's one piece, but number before they do a pre-qualification process.
Right. But that, I mean, responsible, the whole point of our contractor quality assurance is that responsible means something. And if you still have that same language, that should mean something if we're selecting the subcontractor or if another entity is. Correct. And so just because we're not the ones making the selection doesn't mean that responsible no longer means something, right? I mean, they still have to follow the law, and the law says responsible bidder, right?
Right. Well, from a selection standpoint, yes.
Right. And the whole point of my question and asking about that selection process is that seems to me to be where we can have that input and to make sure that if we're selecting a contractor, construction manager at risk, that their policy for selecting subcontractors is in line with our policy. It doesn't seem to me that we lose that ability. It just seems that it's in a different place in the process.
Well, in this case, Chapter 26A says what the GC is allowed to use as selection criteria for selecting subcontractors. So, I mean, the 26A spells that out. So why would we try and create a policy that does almost the same thing.
Is it,
It's a lot of the same things.
Is it
I think
different
what
than the
What he's trying to say is, if you read that, it's part of our post-bid.
well, that's part of the qualification, wouldn't it be?
I would hope
selecting-
that they're not going to choose someone that wouldn't fit our post-bid,
Well,
because
yeah.
then they're on the hook for explaining why they didn't choose a responsible bidder. I would think that they would have relationships with these
Sure. They're at risk.
subs that, I mean, Ryan Company or whoever is going to do the other project, I would hope that they have enough wherewithal in their, in their trade to know who do they want to work with, because they're on the hook for this thing.
Right.
They're our contractor.
But do they detail at the very beginning, when you choose them, what their process will be for getting subcontractors?
They
Is
would,
that
they
part of
would,
the qualification to even
yeah,
bring them in?
what we're selecting on is that their process for subcontractors.
trying
But
to-
again, that is, they are bound by 26A and what they can use as pre-qualifications, which again is similar information, past performance, safety records, those type of things.
Is there much difference than what we used to use for our pre-qualification before the state changed it? I mean, do they use kind of the same process?
It's asking for similar information, is I guess to put that, like safety records and past performance, our
Have any
questionnaires.
judgments or any things like liens against them and things like that, or violations that would throw them out of their pool of qualified bidders?
I'd have to defer. I don't know if they have a better answer on that, but I mean, again,
Well, they're here. I would
yeah.
hope they would answer the question.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody from our contracting industry have any more information on how you select subcontractors. Anybody have anything? Or?
We have, Ryan, we have a questionnaire. It's based
You might want to come up.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, Matt Van Loon, Director of Construction, Ryan Companies. So we have a questionnaire. I think some of the other contractors have similar questions, but we developed it based on financial information to make sure that they're financially viable, safety records, as stated, past qualifications. We do ask if there's any outstanding legal lawsuits or anything, just for awareness. So we do go through a qualification process because, like somebody stated, we have to contract with them, so we're taking that risk. We're a little bit limited by what the law says we can ask, so we can't just cut people to cut them, but we do go through a process.
Do you ask if they're going to self-perform or they're going to sub it out?
I think we have questions that lead to that, yes.
Okay.
Yep. And some of them will sub certain portions, that's common.
Yeah, I know that.
Yep.
But I would hope that their subs have to follow the same
Yep.
rules that they have to
Yep.
follow, correct?
And they're tied to our owner agreement, which is published, so they have all that same language.
Okay.
Yep.
Actually,
Thank you.
sounds like it's a tighter control.
Is there, is that documentation a public document? Or at what, like their questionnaire, what they're doing compared to what's public, as part of 26A?
It's a post. Yeah, I assume you have a site that you post everything to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
May I interject two comments?
Yeah.
One, I think what you hear the council saying is, we want to make sure you're asking the right questions. You're our backstop. And my second comment, if you can go back to slide 6, and this is not what the council's focusing on today, but this is a really important component as to why I feel construction manager at risk is so valuable. When you look at, on the top of that table, you see the blue and purple colors. That's the construction manager, and the construction manager is at the table at the same time that the architect is hired. So that you should have the best opportunity to get accurate construction numbers and to be able to change things as you go along, as you continue to get cost information. It doesn't just happen at the end and you bid it. They're running cost information all along. When you look at the bottom example that's called DBB, Design Bid Build, That's the way we've traditionally done it for years. When do you start to see cost estimating in any meaningful way? Halfway through the project. And this is what has cost us time and money. We spend time with an architect and they fully bake the drawings. Then they put it out for bid and you hope that the architect's estimate is correct. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And when it's not, either the project is scrapped or you start over again and scramble with ways to try to figure out how to bring it in within budget. That's why I like this process. You're a team from the very beginning.
That's a great point.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you.
Good to have
The-
an architect.
Do you have more slides?
I do, yep, that's okay. Yep,
Yeah,
we can
let's get
pause,
through.
yep. Oh, you got it?
No, I can wait.
Okay.
We go through and finish, and then any questions, we'll open up at that time.
And this is, as Councilman Simonson talked about, these are things that the construction manager at risk are doing before the bidding, right? They're doing constructability reviews. They're doing helping with phasing. How do we
Just so the council understands, when you say bidding, that's the construction manager actually getting hard costs for all
correct?
the subs.
Yeah.
They're talking to people long before then. They're getting estimates, but this is the final bidding portion.
And helping us set up bid packages or helping bid, how does this work get phased and packaged, and as the councilman mentioned, the estimating, right? I mean, who better to help with the estimating than the people who do the work, right? And this was a question that came up. We talked about it, and I used the wrong word. Interim. It's interim guaranteed maximum price. So the council on a previous project did an interim construction manager guaranteed maximum price, and that is a matter to get those items with long lead times out moving forward. So the case that was just done was electrical equipment, mechanical equipment. We've done it for structural steel before. So in that case, the council would approve an interim guaranteed maximum price before doing the cumulative final guaranteed maximum price once we have all the costs and design done and know what we're doing. So. We talked about this one already a little bit, that we are, just like we include in our horizontal projects, we are continuing to include the language for the payroll, that we can request payroll records. That those specs are in both construction manager at risk and our typical roadway projects. As I mentioned before, we've got 3 projects underway using construction manager at risk. Des Moines Fire Station number 4, and so that one, as I mentioned, in May 6th, the council approved that interim guaranteed maximum price to get the electrical equipment going, and we would anticipate that in July, council would approve that cumulative GMP. By then, we will have the design far enough along, and that's when we'll know the total guaranteed maximum price, and that would all line up for fire station number 4 to be under construction starting in late July and targeting a December of 2025 completion. And again, I appreciate the folks from Ryan Companies being here, and so that's moving forward. The Reichart Community Recreation Center, also using the construction manager at risk process. And so the council approved that pre-construction agreement on May 6th. So again, those I had on that previous chart, the stars on there. The council does ultimately decide and approve those agreements. And so, with the construction manager at risk there and the guaranteed maximum prices. And so then we would be targeting in August, doing a guaranteed maximum price, interim guaranteed maximum price for early procurement of electrical equipment, and then targeting mid-September for that total guaranteed maximum price, which would really kick off the construction, and then that would set us up for a mid 2026 completion of the Reichardt Community Recreation Center. The TM Franklin County Administration Building, the council approved that pre-construction agreement in April, and so we're looking at that first package, and we have our team here, design team here from OPN to talk about that in the next item here. But that would start interior demolition. Again, that's kind of allowing us to get started and move that schedule forward. And then ultimately targeting early 2025 for total guaranteed maximum price, which would allow us that end of year 2025 completion. So, and again, that's the team we've already got the team in McGuff that was selected. So, so we're very excited with, as the councilman mentioned, the teams we have in place for these projects. And so with that being said, I know we've had a lot of questions. Are there any additional questions?
Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, yep, Chris, yeah, Councilman.
I think I started all this by pulling it off the consent agenda, and I still have the same questions I ask in writing and during the meeting, and so I'll try and do a better job. First off, I like this plan. I mean, I don't have any general plan, and I'm not trying to do like a gotcha or anything, but the action on the agenda is what got my attention, because it said we're hiring J. Dunn for pre-construction services for $60,000. Like, you had to read a whole bunch of stuff to figure out we were hiring them for the project. And I wasn't sure at the beginning if we had already hired him. In fact, on the 6th, it says, I mean, I tried to ask these, but it says that in our packet, for the action where we were approving them, the J.E. Dunn Construction Company was selected to provide CMR services, and all the things you had done with them already. I had mentioned that we were at a public meeting where it was announced a month earlier that they were going to be the construction manager, and that decision had been done. And I couldn't find a place where we talked about the overall cost and approach to it. So was the 6th the first time that we acted on this?
That was hiring them for the pre-construction services. So yes, that's when they were officially brought on.
And that, like, the headline and the council agenda item says that we were acting on $60,000. I think we have to do a better job in the future of saying what we're doing when we hire a construction manager, because that was very hidden in there. And then we had a lot of talk about the cost and the cost of the fees of the contractor. And so the first thing is, I want to make sure that nobody is selecting contractors other than the council. I think that's our job, and I think we have to do it. And I think we have to be careful with any information that we put out that the council owns those decisions, and we need to make sure that we follow that process. The second thing is, I have questions about the fee itself. So 30% of our selection process, as I see all your information, is based on the fee. Mm-hmm. But if there's a guaranteed maximum cost, why do we care what the fee is?
Well, if we're bringing them in the schematic design process. So the design isn't complete, the packages aren't set up, and so from doing construction manager at risk, you will see people set the guaranteed maximum price at different points. The earlier you set it, if I'm one of the GCs, I'm going to pad it more because there's more unknowns. We haven't finished the design yet. So what we ask for is their fee, which is what they're receiving, so you can compare the construction manager at risks based on their fee. We're not asking for the total guaranteed maximum price because the design isn't complete, and so it would be a very early, I guess, estimate, if you will, that they would have to put forth. So the fee is what they are saying that they're going to get out of the project. So if their fee is, if they put 5% and another one puts 2%, well, there's the relative comparison right there. But the bid packages, the electrical bid packages are what they're going to be, but they're not designed yet. So I don't know if that makes sense. This selection is done before the design is done. You know?
What's that?
It's,
No, it's the whole fee.
it'll be the fee for the whole project.
But it's not the whole project.
It's not the dollar amount, it's the percentage.
I can be convinced of this, but my disconnect is on the chart that you have up there. we're through this process a long ways before the city, the council knows that they agree with one contractor on what the maximum cost is going to be. What if there's disagreement about that in, 2/3 the way through the process? I'm trying to understand how much leverage the council gives up in this process early on by selecting a contractor before we've negotiated a price.
That's the benefit of the process is initially you're only approving the pre-construction. We could part ways. If working with the team doesn't work out, the council could say, we're not going to approve. So see, the stars are the council touch points. The council could say, we're not going to approve the guaranteed maximum price, and then we're not moving forward. And then to be honest, we would have to either go back to the drawing board and maybe we bring on a new construction manager at risk, negotiate with number 2 on the list. Or when we do the design bid build process, we're just getting hit once right at the end of all the bidding.
So every star is where we approve.
Every star is where where there are checkpoints. But the first star is just that pre-construction agreement. And so really we're all on the hook for is that scope of work. And if that pre-construction services for some reason goes sour and we can't come to, we're not happy with the guaranteed maximum prices, the council could choose not to approve those. So to me, this actually gives more checkpoints and leverage before going, because really the design bid build, they're not involved during the design. So we're just taking the low bidder. And you all get to approve the contract.
I see weaknesses in the other, but I also want to make sure that the council has some leverage throughout it. For instance, like going to the next step in terms of price, I don't really want to assume there's going to be change orders. I think that's the beauty of this, that the change orders and the hiccups that happen under a construction manager at risk that's where the risk is. There's going to be unexpected things that happen, and the number of change orders and things that the council has to act on to keep the project going should be minimized because the manager is taking the risk, not the city. When we build in continuous, change orders, it makes it feel from the beginning like, well, it's a wink and a nod. You're really the construction manager at risk, but we know you're going to have to come back to us because there's going to be something unexpected that happens. I think that's just another point in this process where the council is losing leverage. And those 2 points, like, as much as I like this project, this process, I want to make sure that we're strengthened in those. And I think there's ways to do it. For instance, I think the council should have a policy about what change orders are even legitimate to bring forward under this new style, because they should be different than a bid document, than just a design build bid. Because in that, we really are taking bids for a project that we designed and spec'd. If things have changed, then we have to own that a little bit because we asked them to bid on something different. In this case, we're going through the process so that they know what's happening and that they're willing to take the risk to deliver it as we designed it. I just think there's a weakness there, and we have to be careful, and there's probably ways we can manage it. But if we wait to manage it when the change orders come, we're just going to have to fold because we're going to be halfway through building a project.
I think the change order the change orders are not going to go away with this process, and there is no way for them to go. I agree with you. They are definitely minimized by this process because as we talked, the construction manager is involved throughout the design. But for example, I had a site where, in my previous role, where you do geotechnical borings at, say, at a certain frequency across the site, at so many locations. It doesn't cover the whole site. So we started excavating for the foundation work, and what we found was a ginormous culvert that half century ago used to be an animal crossing culvert, right? So that was a change order. There's no way that we could ask our GCs to be responsible for that. And if we did, if I'm them, I'm going to pad my fee even more, and we're going to pay more. So there are going to be unforeseen conditions we run into during our site that we will have change orders. There also is going to be scope things that, quite frankly, as owners, we decide will be changes. I think was at Principal Park, we decided that we were going to do some work with the lockers later on in the process that we weren't going to do. We initially didn't decide during the design phase, and we said, well, no, let's do some work with the lockers, add some more, and so that's a change order. That's not, so there's gonna be change orders.
So we decided that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's different, and I think Chris stated that.
Yeah.
That's different. If we decide, of course, there's going to be a
Yep.
change order, and if something like you said about the boring, no one has any control over that.
Right.
I think where this is, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think I know where you're coming from. Is those things? Okay, we understand
Yep.
those change orders, but some of the other change orders that we've seen in other projects coming forward, because we did it the other process, we shouldn't see those. We shouldn't see those change orders. If you're going through as a team, as a contractor and a design team together, as Mike stated, as an architect, and you guys have designed it, and we know what we're going to build, unless the owner changes it or something crazy comes up, like you stated, we shouldn't have any change orders.
Right.
And I think that's what I think we all kind of agree.
So, Mayor, in interest of time, we need to move on. Would the council like a separate conversation about change orders? Because they're actually,
I think we just had it.
is that good enough?
Well, I don't know.
Well, the deal is, it looks like right here, you look at where we have change orders on both of them that we change, but we can have more conversation. If you want to look at the policies, we can look at the policies. If you want to change something, let's bring it forward then. But we have ability to approve, it looks like, change orders on both.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think should be very clear.
if you want a step of do you want a guide of where we're touch points that shows where if you feel that we're not having control as a council, then let's go through and we'll look at the policy of where things come back to us, if that's the issue.
I just want to make sure that it's very clear that the change orders, unless it's those two reasons,
Yeah.
that we're not going to be responsible for any change. If you guys designed it and you bid it, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, something came in higher, steel went up in price. I don't know. I mean, are we going to be responsible for that, or does that come out of their?
Well, and I think that's back to this process. I mean, one of the challenges with the design bid build, and back to your point of minimizing it, is again, they're setting a price based on reviewing it for 4 weeks, and they're locking in prices, right? So they're locking in, I mean, heck, the landscaping work isn't done sometimes for 18 months later. So the prices could go up. In this case, they could do bid packages at different times, and it kind of narrows in that process, right? They do the electrical package early on, and so then they could lock in the prices, and there's not like this unknown of when the lead times are when they're doing the design bid build. So there's definitely an advantage to doing this.
But they still have to bid out the landscaping that they're going to do. In 18 months, and if that does go up in 18 months, that's not where I want to see a change.
Right. Correct.
I think that's my point.
Right.
I don't know if that's your guys'.
That would be.
That is absolutely. I do not want to see a change order for that.
That would be
not our responsibility.
That would be locked in.
To me, my point can be summarized this way. If we're moving from one to the other because there's advantages to the other, and the advantage is that the construction manager takes the risk, then they should take the risk. If the whole idea is we're going to go through this new cumbersome, a lot of cooks in the kitchen in order to make the project be delivered better and have a guaranteed price for our citizens, then we have to start with, we can't lose sight of the fact that the whole purpose of this project is that the construction manager holds the risk, not the citizens of Des Moines. That's why we're moving. That's the only reason we'd move this way. And so when we build in all these places where, yeah, they're going to have the risk, except in this case, and then we're going to do it here, and we aren't going to really know what the maximum is until, a year or two after we're working with them. Like, that to me loses, like, we get lost in the woods, and we've lost sight of the number one goal, which is we're trying to shift the risk from the citizens of Des Moines to the contractors that are going to build it, and they get more freedom to build it in a way than they did before, so it's more predictable for them. And I don't want to lose sight of that, but I feel like I feel like right now we don't have enough precautions, and I think we're going to come back at some point with one of these first 3 projects and have big change orders and say, boy, I guess we were the ones at risk, not the contractors. And so I think there's things that we can do now, not to throw this out, but I think it's good. I think we've picked great contractors. Yeah. Like, I'm thrilled about where we are right now. But I think that we can predict where the pressure points are going to be over the next 2 years on these 3 projects and write some policies and procedures so that we are sure to protect the citizens so that they're not at risk.
And if I could just add, what can we do? I've heard Steve say a couple of times they're going to pad the bid because they have to take in
Unknowns.
some count orders. What happens if it's under? I mean, they're going to pad it to put more money in their pocket to cover those changes. But what happens if there are no change orders? Then what happens to that money? We've just paid more? Is that?
So their fee percentage is set, but then they'll do the bid packages.
Right, and you said they're going to pad it.
I'm saying, no, what I was saying is, if we say, contractor, you take all the risks for that there'll be 0 change orders, they would, and if you have them set the guaranteed maximum price much earlier in the process, the earlier you set it, then if I'm them, I would pad it.
Okay.
But if you allow them to go through 26A and get their bid packages in order, then they'll know more information, and then the price will be more precise, in my opinion.
I understand.
And we will have access to that information when the GMP is set. We'll be comfortable in what the sub costs are adding up to. We'll have that information as part of that.
Yeah.
I think this is a new process, so I think we can go through, we'll see how these processes go. Then to Chris's point, if we need to develop different policy or find out more, that we will have a better roadmap to go by on the projects we're doing. We already found out on the animal control, we got a quality product. We were able to get it done on time. We were able to get things done. So I think we see how these projects.
Well, I appreciate that, Mayor, and I think that's a great idea, but I think that we should be upfront with these change orders, that if it's not something crazy unforeseen and you've gone through this process, I would, if we need to pass a policy that says that, then we need to do it beforehand and not after, so then we're stuck.
Well, we have.
I don't think we should have to do that. I think that
It's the same
that's
thing.
part of what they're going to do. And I see him shaking his head. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, you are at risk. That's what we're doing. You're taking, what subs, you've gone through the process. You know what you're going to build. Unless us as an owner changes something or something, boring or, oh my gosh, we've hit this and, we can't. Yeah, then that's a change order. But any other change orders, I would expect not to see at this council table.
And quite honestly, I'm not seeing them even with the before process.
And I think maybe we're talking about something that we don't have to talk about then. But I want to make sure. I want to make sure that.
Let's go through this we'll find out
in
this process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we need to
Yeah.
move on. If there is more discussion desired
You have some
on this,
meetings?
let me,
We
we
have
have
people that have
a
been-
whole nother presentation. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Steve is also always available individually if council members want to set up some time with him to speak through. I want to thank the CMRs that are out here as well. I know I see Ryan and McCoff, so thank you.
Right, ready? Next item. Good morning, Mayor, members of council. My name is Ann Sobiek-Munson. I'm the city architect. I work in the facilities division under the city manager's office. And we focus on planning and design for city-owned buildings. I'm going to provide a quick overview related to this project this morning before we have OPN come up and give you an update on the Phase 1 renovations for this work. I also want to point out we have Mike Harriman and Andrew Segrist here from McGough. They are the construction manager at risk for this project. And just as a little transition to illustrate some of the points that were made in the previous presentation, we've already benefited from some knowledge that Mike has from working on the initial construction of the building with a different company, but he gave us information that didn't show up on any of the drawings, so that was good. And we've also already been working with them to hit our budget targets. So that's one of the things that I think Council Member Simonson pointed out. Those have been both helpful. And you'll see in the schedule, it was also their suggestion that we are embracing to do an early demo package for this project. All right, so what we have today is this brief introduction. I'm going to try to go a little fast through my part because I do want you to see OPN's work that focuses on the Phase 1 renovation. Part of the reason we're doing this now as an update is we are scheduled to go to Urban Design Review Board and Access Advisory Board later this month, so we'll be having those kind of public design review meetings. So we wanted to give everyone a chance to see the project before those dates. So this project has had kind of a long life. There's a lot of complexity to it in terms of acquiring the property and various threads associated with it. I'll let you read the small print here, but as you know, after we entered into the purchase agreement, we did a feasibility study. OPN was also the architect team that led that feasibility study. The outcome of that study, which involved 11 departments in the city, was really to recommend 3 different phased projects. So Phase 1 is what we're going to talk about today. That focuses on the city administrative departments and the public spaces. So we have a public meeting suite and a customer service hub. That mainly will be on the east side of the building. Phase 2 is the second phase that's recommended, which would renovate the west half of the building in addition to some space within the 1200 Mulberry parking garage for a new police headquarters. That Phase 2 project does not yet have a confirmed timeline. And then there's a future project related to some academy functions in MetroStar that could not be accommodated in the 1200 Locust project. Again, that one does not have a confirmed timeline. So today we're focusing on Phase 1.
It can't be because of the space or because of funding? The last one you just.
The last one had to do with the specific types of functions.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Big vehicles and other things.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So putting this on a timeline, you can kind of see mapped out where we are. I try to use some of the same colors that Steve has. Engineering and facilities kind of use green for design, orange for construction. So you can see that in September of 22 was when council approved the purchase agreement. That led to the pre-design study. We hired OPN again in late 2023, started design right before we closed on the purchase of the building. So currently we are kind of midway through design on the project. The orange bar you see under the green is really the construction timeline, so we anticipate an early interior demolition phase, and then the major construction in 2025. Right below that, we bought a lot of furniture with that building. Nationwide had it set up for around 1,800 people. We're never going to have that number of people, but we are reusing as much furniture as possible, so we need to have a tear down, an inventory, so that we can get the renovations done, and then we will have another furniture, a request for you to approve furniture services for an installation when the project's completed.
Will we use that same furniture, some of it?
We're going to use as much as possible. We'll have to supplement it with some new pieces, but we are reusing the furniture panels, the surfaces, yeah. Oh yeah, we've actually also repurposed it in other locations throughout the city. So now we have kind of it's great furniture. It's Herman Miller furniture, so yeah. The other two lines below that, I just wanted to let you know that there's a couple other tasks where we have groups of city staff working on initiatives that will help support this move over to 1,200 Locust. So one is a customer service hub operations task force. And you'll see a little bit more about that in the next slide, but that's a group of about a dozen people from 6 or 7 departments in the city who currently have public service windows or public service functions. One of the great opportunities of our move to this facility is to consolidate a lot of our customer service functions into one spot, which gives us an opportunity to reimagine our customer service operations to better serve both anyone doing business with the city as well as those of us providing that customer service on the city side. So we're working on that. And then the second thing that we're trying to do as part of this project, which is just getting started, and our colleagues in IT are leading the management of this, is a digitization initiative where we are identifying in all the departments that are moving paper documents that we do not need to hold in paper form, and getting those digitized so we're not spending money on like storage rooms in the new facility and moving stuff over that we don't really need to have. So those two things will be ongoing between now and when we think this first phase will be moved in, which is the first quarter of 2026. So that's, yeah.
On that task force, will you have only staff, no like residents or citizens that will actually use the building as part of that task force?
At this point, it is only city staff.
Okay.
Yep. The other thing is kind of a preface I wanted to show you because this comes up a lot, especially when you start looking at numbers and size, and it's come up in a lot of our user group meetings. We made this about a year ago. This building is huge. So it's 340,000 square feet across 5 floors. This is a footprint of the building at 1,200 Locust, showing you the comparison of that footprint with some of our existing buildings. So keep in mind, as we look at the scale of what we're doing, this building is, a lot bigger than anything that we have currently in our portfolio, and it can easily accommodate the departments and functions that we currently have in these other facilities. So just as a reference. And then this is kind of a summary slide of just some highlights of phase 1. We are renovating about 155,000 square feet, primarily on the east side and center of floors 2 through 5. There will be a quadrant on the street level that is going to be the new public meeting suite, which will include a new, much larger chambers and boardroom space. The departments that are planned to relocate with this phase are listed right below there, so you can see it's basically everyone in the Armory, everyone in City Hall, our 2 departments that are working out of Polk County River Place, and then Human Resources, which is currently over at MSC, will move into this building as well. So we're relocating 10 departments. We estimate that is around 360 city staff people that will be moved into this at the end of phase 1. And then that service hub, we will have 1 location, and you'll see the design for that, the design concept as OPN comes up to present. But we're basically taking 8 different locations throughout the city in 4 buildings and putting them on the same level with the same kind of first point of access in this facility. So the way it will work is we have a kind of multi-layered system where there's a first stop that's an information security desk location that can handle the first kind of layer of questions. Then you'll see there's a series of transaction windows for specific transactions that people have to do with the city. And then we're providing supplemental space to call down subject matter experts to handle questions related to more complex issues. If someone needs to look at a plan for their fence in their yard and needs to sit down at a table. So again, this is putting all those places in one location. In addition, the front doors to housing, civil and human rights, and human resources will all also be on that same level. So if anyone needs to access those services, they can get there. So, and then the last thing I wanted to mention is, I already mentioned the customer service task force, but the user group meetings related to the design that you'll see involved over 70 city staff members from 11 different departments in multiple rounds of meetings. So what you see today is the result of a combination of OPN's leadership in terms of strategies for tackling this, McGough's input in sort of some of the most cost-effective ways to handle it, and then all of this information from those user groups. Last thing before I turn it over to OPN is just a quick budget overview so you can see, and this is approved funding in the current CIP. So we've already done the property acquisition cost budgeting. We will not purchase that Mulberry parking garage until December of this year. So that's that bottom chunk. The top chunk, which is the construction project for phase 1, we have a $28.4 million construction or project cost. 19.5 of that is our targeted GMP. So that is the budget target we're working with McGough and OPN for that GMP amount. There's another $8.9 million in additional project costs, but that breaks out to fees for design, pre-construction, commissioning. We have a considerable furniture line item on this one because of all the taking down, reinstalling, and supplementing. Some moving costs, and then we hold a contingency in that budget to address some of the unknowns that we might encounter just in case. So that's where the budget is at this point. And again, I just want to reiterate, McGough has been super helpful in helping us understand that 19.5 target and understanding what we need to do to hit that. So with that, that's the big project overview. I'm going to turn it over to Danielle Herman, who's principal and architect with OPN Architects, to give you an update on the actual design.
May I ask a couple quick questions before we do that?
Yeah.
Of the buildings that we're going to vacate with this move, do we own all of them, or is some of the space leased?
The Polk County River Place is leased space. We own the others, and I think you've already seen some separate from what our group does in facilities. The development services team is now working on an agreement potentially for the armory. I think there's also something in the works for the property across the street that we were planning to use to accommodate a new construction, and then the request for interest on how to use this building.
And once we build out and utilize all of the space in the new building, how much excess space will we have in that building, and how do we plan to use that?
So there's not much excess once the police headquarters functions are accommodated. There's about a 10% swing of which we're allowing for future growth. So we'll have a little bit of extra square feet, but not so much that it seems like it was. This was part of the feasibility study that concluded last year.
But there's growth in each department space
Yeah.
individually, so there's not one big chunk of space that it would be unused. there would be sufficient size for grow or ability to grow within each of the department spaces.
Yeah, based on the study concepts, I think right now there was just a small area of probably a couple thousand square feet that maybe doesn't have something planned for it, but everything else was being utilized by either the police functions in phase 2 or the phase 1 work. Any other questions before I turn it to Danielle? All right, thanks.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Thank you for giving us a few moments today to give you an update on this project. So while I am the one standing here this morning presenting, there is a team of people that have been diligently working on this for quite some time now. I've got a couple of my team members here with me, Anna Marie and Maddie, who are in the audience, and then our newest team members from McGough Construction, who are out here as well. And then in addition to that, some consultants that have been with us since the study phase, Morrissey Engineering and Raker Roads Engineering, who respectively provide MEP services and structural engineering services. So a quick reminder about the project. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but the 1200 Locust building is the kind of H-shaped building in the middle. With this, we also, during the study and are currently working on just a little bit of work in phase 1 at 1200 Mulberry, the parking ramp. And then you can also see with the orange lines indicated how it's connected to the city skywalk system. Also, being on Locust Avenue, it has the DART free route that runs right by it, and then you're fronting the sculpture park. And then during the study, we took a quick high-level look at what kind of parking is available around that. So that's what you're seeing in that 2-block radius ring there. Early on in the project, we also did visioning with all of the leadership and some user groups. This helped us establish guiding principles that we've used throughout the entire process, study and design, to be touch points as we're making decisions. So those guiding principles included providing a welcoming, accessible, and safe facility for the community, providing modern and efficient functional work areas that have more variety and more flexibility long-term, and then solutions that will also support and encourage collaboration, trying to break down silos between departments and literally breaking down and taking walls out from between departments. As we got further into this process, then we used those guiding principles to sort of funnel down into more specificity to create some workplace strategies. These have helped guide how we think about the actual work environments. So one of those was to take advantage of horizontal and vertical adjacencies in the building, and I'll show you a little bit about how we did this. Also improving city services, providing dedicated public-facing zones. As Ann described, that really is related to both our conferencing areas and this new centralized customer service hub space, but that also then allows us to create separate secured staff work environments. And then we're going to create open office environments that allow more collaboration and flexibility, as I mentioned, and centralize and decentralize some staff amenity and support spaces that'll show you how those kind of work out in the plan. We've been using these two diagrams throughout both the study and the design phase in different forms, but to help kind of describe for everybody what we're talking about here. On the uppermost diagram, you can see how we're thinking about bringing people into the building, which is happening at 2 different levels. So we have people entering at the main front door on Locust Street, but also coming in at the level 2 skywalk entrance. So one of our initial tasks and strategies was figuring out how to bring people to that one central location on level 2, which you'll start to see in the plans. We had an opportunity within this building because there are already dedicated stairs and elevators that access and service just those 2 floors. So we can really bring the public in to those 2 levels and keep them on levels 1 and 2 to make sure that those upper levels 3 through 5 remain separate for staff. The bottom diagram then starts to look at how we stack departments within the building. So this is getting at that vertical adjacency that I mentioned earlier. The example I like to use on this is if you look at where neighborhood services is kind of on that left in the gold color and housing right below them, we strategically located them right next to each other vertically because that was a quicker adjacency for them than had we tried to put them on the same floor or have them separated further. So we'll take a quick look at each of the individual plans, and I do want to point out For each of the 2 centralized conferencing areas in the building, we will take a closer look, so I'll have some enlarged plans, so we'll just go through these at a high level in the overall plan. So this is our first level. This is Locust would be running across the top of the page here. You can see where the red arrow is at the top, that's your main public entry into that existing 2-story lobby volume. The light gray areas on the plan are all those future police zones. So as Ann mentioned, we're really only using that northeast quadrant of level 1. And the kind of light yellow color is signifying all of the public spaces. So you're coming in off the lobby, you've got your pre-function zone that leads you into the new 150-person council and boardroom area. And then that darker gray zone is the remainder of the public conference center areas, but those are the secured spaces, so those would be behind staff escort zones. And again, I'll walk you through a little more detail on that here in a moment. You can also the hatching on the upper left is just indicating where we currently today have some lease spaces. And then on the lower left, it's all of our building services area that will remain untouched.
So we will have some lease.
We do today. In the future, it was TBD as far as what would happen with that.
Probably wouldn't have that. We have a police station there. At
that point.
Yeah, okay.
As we move up then to level 2, again, that light yellow color is all of the public areas. So you can start to see here as you come up those stairs or elevator in that 2-story public lobby, you're coming directly into this centralized customer service hub zone. You can also see how that then connects to the city skywalk system. So it's bringing people into that area all in one location. All of the other spaces on this floor and on the floors above are then secured. So you're starting to see here, and we'll see on the floors as we go up, that the police spaces stack along the west and all of the city admin spaces stack along the east. And as Ann mentioned, the groups or departments that have been located on this floor were done so strategically because they each have a public-facing element of their own and have their own entry lobbies. So that's housing at the northeast corner, Civil and Human Rights and the Human Resources group that are at the southeast corner, and then we've got our city clerk, that's the light green color off of our customer service hub. You'll also start to see in the darker blue color some staff amenity spaces that are indicated, and I'll talk about these as they stack up through the building as well. We've now moved up to level 3, and you'll see here our second conferencing center. This is the internal staff conferencing center that's located at kind of the middle of the H of the building, that darker gray space. I'll provide a zoomed in view or an enlarged view of this here in a moment so we can talk more about that. On this floor, we've located neighborhood services in the upper northeast corner and development services to the southeast corner. And again, here you'll start seeing those darker blue staff amenity spaces. These are our kitchenettes and our mother's rooms. On this floor, the kitchenette is a little bit larger, but on all of the floors, we've been able to take advantage of where our the kitchenettes and the mother's rooms in the building were already located and repurpose those. So we're trying to take advantage of existing spaces as much as we can. On level 4, we've got engineering located at this level, and then IT. IT was strategically placed on this floor because existing infrastructure for the previous IT department was here, so we could actually repurpose some of their IT lab spaces, and it gave them access to the infrastructure that was already located there, so it made a lot of sense. The darker gray colors that are at the middle of the plan on this level are existing conferencing spaces that we'll just be able to repurpose as is, as they stand today. And again, then those staff amenity spaces as they're stacking up through the building. And our uppermost level, level 5, this is where we have our city manager's office. We have legal in the kind of green color that's to the southeast, and then finance that's in the a little lighter shade of blue. Here, again, we've been able to take advantage of some existing spaces in the center of the building that are either being repurposed as conferencing spaces or that we're using as some of our departmental storage needs on those levels. So, and then at this uppermost level, you can again see where our kitchenette and mother's rooms are stacked.
Council chambers. On the, but
Great
did I see it
segue.
on the first floor?
So this is a zoomed in view of level 1. So this is right off of your main public entry that you're seeing kind of on the left where that red arrow is at. So right when you come in the front door, there's a set of doors that will take you into a pre-function zone, and then that pre-function zone takes you into that new 150-person board and council space. And we do have a couple of rendered views coming up that I'll show you of what these spaces are starting to look like or could look like. So on this diagram, the kind of the thicker red line is really showing you where the public environments are, kind of to the left of the line, and then where the secured staff escorted public conference center spaces would be kind of the upper right of the line. So you're starting to see we were able to create a nice mix of room types and room sizes. Through our programming efforts, these are the kinds of spaces we knew all of the various departments would need in order to serve the public. And then at the central upper portion of the plan, there's also your council support spaces, much like you have here today. So there's a dedicated conference space, a mayor's office, a little work area, and a dedicated restroom. Any questions on this in particular before I move on?
How does somebody access if I'm in a wheelchair and I want to go to a council meeting?
Yep, you're right on level 1 at the front door, so it's zero entry.
And there's, okay, zero entry. Okay.
So are we having the, does this look like the council will have our back to the windows on the front floor?
Right now, that is the way we've got it set up, but there is a wall sort of behind you screening, and the windows on that level are screened so you can see out, but if you walk by today, you'll notice that you can't see in on that level, so it is still private. This is that enlarged view then of the internal staff conferencing center. Here we got really lucky actually. There was a lot of conferencing spaces already existing at this level, and we were able to almost entirely repurpose most of this area with just a few minor modifications and tweaks. So again here, through our programming efforts, we were able to confirm that these are the types of spaces that we would need to serve all of our internal and interdepartmental meetings. And then we've got that larger kitchenette area that here is centralized within the building on that third level to help support this zone as well as the rest of the building. So this is the first of our conceptual views. So the design is still in progress. So each of these is ongoing, but this is what we're anticipating your new public lobby entry could look like. So to orient you, the front doors of the building are just there to the right as they exist. You can see where we would have the existing stair, renovated stair that takes you up to that level 2 customer service hub. Directly behind where you're standing in this view would be your entry to that pre-function and council chambers area. And just to the left is where there's an elevator that just traverses between levels 1 and 2 to provide ADA and accessible entry to that level 2 customer service hub. This view is as we have now moved up, or if we were right standing at the top of the stairs and we were looking straight ahead, this would be that new customer service hub. Again, this will continue to evolve as that operational effort internally gains more ground and we continue to react to what they need. But right now the thought is that you would have a information and security kiosk that has good visibility and views both to the lobby on level 1 below it, but also to the skywalk entry. So it really is that kind of central funneling point. And then beyond that, or behind it, what you're seeing is those customer service transaction windows, both where you would potentially meet with a subject matter expert as needed, as Ann was describing, or if you were just coming in for any other more kind of transactional components. This is a view if you were entering that space from the skywalk. So if you're coming in as the public at that level, again, from a wayfinding standpoint, you've got your information kiosk and service desk straight ahead, and then you have your transaction windows to the left, with a few public meeting rooms to the right where subject matter experts can meet with people if they need to. Now we've just flipped around and we're looking at the other end of the customer service hub. So from this side, again, you have the information kiosk directly in front of you, and beyond that you can see that skywalk entry where you would come in. You've got your city clerk's transaction windows that are just to the right, and then a community meeting room to your left. We've now just moved back down to level 1. So if we had just come off that lobby and entered the pre-function zone for your new council and board area, this would be that space. You can see we've started to indicate some display areas here. Again, those will continue to evolve, but we think that could be a nice place to locate some good display things, maybe some things here that would move from this building. And then you can see through those doors that your new council and boardroom area. Just to the right off of screen right now would also be a large digital monitor, so we could be live streaming council work sessions. So this can also act as overflow if we have a really large council session at any point.
Danielle, quick question.
Yes.
Is there a committee to deal with ephemera and various, you think of all of our buildings and the neat storytelling opportunities with some of the things. Is there a dedicated group to help incorporate those pieces into this new building?
That's a great question. As of yet, no. We've talked quite a bit about it, but there's not a group that's specifically working on that.
I would ask the city manager to consider that, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime move. And there are lots of important historical pieces that may not even be visible, but should be visible. And I would hate to lose all of that or put it all in a storage room somewhere.
There's probably quite a bit in storage, so
Probably, well, let's
we can get it out and find out.
dedicate
But
somebody or a team to go through it, and that's going to be time consuming.
Yeah.
And how to properly display and what do we no longer want to keep.
And we do have a lot of opportunities. I may not have pointed out, but on that front lobby, hopefully you all saw there was sort of a dashed area for future artwork. There's a couple of zones you'll see here in the next image as well. So we do have an opportunity not only for some of those historical storytelling, but also to integrate public art in a couple of different ways in the building. This view is if you're standing in that new 150-person board and council chambers, so you'd be looking north, so you can see the two-tiered dais in front of you. This also has that wall behind it that you were asking about, so you've got a monitor on that, but you can still see beyond and through, so there's transparency if you're looking out, so you get a visual connection to the sculpture park across the way. You also get a visual connection to the entry at the main level, but it is screened from the exterior for privacy, so people can't see in or see from behind you. This would be your all's view if you're standing at the dais looking out at the audience. So here again, you can start to see where there could be the potential for some of those future artwork components. I think that was the last view. So I'll try to wrap up here quickly since I know we're past time. This is just a slightly more detailed schedule to add to what Ann shared a little while ago. This is looking specifically at our design phases. So you can see the red asterisk in the middle is our "You are here." We've just completed design development. We're in early construction documents. As Ann mentioned, UDRB and AAB are coming up here in a couple of weeks. And then in mid-July, you'll start to see where we have our first demolition package being issued. That's where you'll see those two separate bars for bidding. And as we begin demolition is actually overlapping the end of our construction documents period. We find that there could be benefit here because we could learn some things as we open things up in the building while we're still completing documents, hopefully get ahead of anything that otherwise might be unforeseen. So that could be of benefit to us. You'll also see that right below where that demo package is noted, we will have an open house coming up in the middle of July for staff, and of course council is invited to come as well, so we can share a little bit more about how all of the spaces in the building are shaping up from a design standpoint. I think with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
questions?
I have one quick comment. I wasn't biased, but you have some concern about the removal of the commercial space. And I get there's complications with the police department, but we make that argument to every company about their security, that we want them to do commercial on the first floor. And I'd just like to make sure that we put forth a good effort to try and make them compatible. I know that's not phase one, but
I think that, yeah, we'll see. I think it's more because of the police aspect of it that has been brought in. So I think we have to look at the security and And see who's still there, because I think a couple of spaces are already open.
I'll echo Councilmember Coleman's point. I mean, today was the first day I heard that we were getting rid of the commercial spaces. So it was my understanding, at least previously, that we were going to retain some of the commercial.
Well, I mean, we have contracts in place with other developments where we provide an incentive and encouragement and a near requirement for it.
Right.
And like, I just think we put ourselves in a bad position of exempting us from rules that we establish for other people.
Well, and the rest of that first floor is still publicly accessible, and the public is going to be, I mean, council chamber is very public. I mean, there's a lot of, the public is going to be in that building regardless. So I agree with Councilmember Coleman that I think it's important.
And I know
to
it's
try
phase
maintain.
two, but I just want to make sure that what we're doing in phase one opens this, keeps that an open option for us, that we do it smart.
I think most of the phase one is on the other side, so I think
Correct.
it still gives opportunity.
And I had a separate question. Just how much conference room space are we programming in this building? And it seemed to me like an awful lot of conference room and public meeting space. And do we have metrics for how existing conference room space is used? And has some of that changed? And
It's a great question. So during the programming stage, we were able to identify with all of the different user groups through that series of meetings that Ann referenced, what types and sizes of spaces and at what frequency they were going to be used. So we let that guide both the size of rooms and how many that we needed. Part of the difference in this new building is that because we're creating dedicated public-facing conferencing rooms and separate interdepartmental and departmental conferencing rooms, you're seeing two different areas for those happening, so that we're not getting what we have today, which is public entering staff work environments for those meetings. We're doing a better job in the future of making sure that we're keeping public in public areas and separate secure staff areas, so that those quantities and sizes were all guided by what kinds of meetings, how many, and how often they were happening within departments and with the public.
And maybe I'm just getting it. So are the conference rooms on the first floor, like if a member of the public is meeting with engineering or development services, there's separate conference rooms for anyone to come meet with city staff, and then the internal conference rooms are only internally used? Is that the distinction?
Correct.
So everyone uses that first floor conference space if you're meeting, if engineering is bringing in stakeholders to meet about a road diet, like that's done on the first floor. If they're meeting internally, that's done
On the third floor. Yep, That's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Staff was actually anxious in the other direction, that there wasn't sufficient conference room space, so they did analyze this. I think another thing to note is that the strategy in this new building, based on some of those guiding principles, is sort of minimizing the enclosed office space, and we have a lot of people in open office workstations. And so there is the idea of that third floor internal conferencing space, as well as some of the things that are noted as drop-in rooms on the plans, is to give staff that's working in open offices a place to meet with each other. And also, we've never had this many departments in one location. So there's a couple, and then the benefit of reusing the third floor spaces is that they're already existing. So those are all some more factors that went into it. And we can see how it goes and see what the utilization is. But I think now we kind of got to a place where everyone feels comfortable both with the kind of workstation that they're going to have or office, and how they're able to use those other components. And I will say, both at MSC and the Armory and City Hall, there are times where it is almost impossible to find a meeting room to meet with some of those external groups, or even with each other. So we already had kind of a need for some of that, so I think it addresses all of that.
Should we assume that the conferencing spaces are electronically
Yeah.
scheduled?
Yeah, so the things that are the small little enclave drop-in rooms are more just drop-in, not scheduled, but the conference suite, the public meeting room, those would all be electronically scheduled through, we have an Outlook system we use.
Thank you. That's exciting.
Okay.
Very much so.
Yeah.
At this point, if there's no other questions, thank you for your presentation. We will reconvene our regular meeting at 5 o'clock, but we have a closed session at 4 o'clock. So we will see the council back here at 4 o'clock and the public at 4:45 for proclamations.
Connie, this is Carl.
Yes, Carl?
Hello, Connie. Yeah, I sent you some text messages of a few questions that I had. Did you see those? Or did they come through?
I quite honestly haven't been paying attention to it. Hold on.
Okay.
Will badge securities cards be required for level 3?
Yeah, the idea is actually that the elevator lobby on 2,
So basically, yes.
Okay.
yeah, the elevator lobby where staff accesses here, you'll see there's doors by the elevators. Those would be badge access, so the idea is 3, 4, and 5 are staff only.
So wherever the public goes, it'll be at base 1 and 2. Okay. The other question was what architecture features from the current council chambers will be incorporated in the new council chambers?
What architecture, she is asking maybe for clarification. There,
Basically, is there anything from, what are the architectural features from the current council?
like there's a giant.
Will they be influenced in the new council chamber?
Okay, if I understand the question, so the dais obviously at the front is two-tiered instead of single-tiered. That's partially to accommodate the
bigger
larger boards and commissions. But some of the same kind of organization or layout that you have today here would be planned. And then again, those support spaces, much like you have here today, are planned there as well.
But it would be much more modern than what we have currently.
Correct, correct. It'll be accessible and we'll have all of the technology to support.
So you can't incorporate any of the sketchings or doorknobs or trim or anything like that into the new space?
What would be, they're going to probably hard to take it out of here.
So yeah, that might depend. I get what you're saying about the historic character. Sometimes when we leave a building, we do take things with us. In this case, because of we don't know what the new use for City Hall might be, there may be a need to keep some of the stuff here. So that's maybe to be determined, but we can note there's an interest in historic components being incorporated. There is a significant amount, even though it's more contemporary, of wood paneling and kind of giving it the gravitas that I think we have here. It's just a different expression.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else, Carl?
Oh, yes. No, that'll do it. Thank you. Except it was hard to hear council members when they didn't cue up their microphone.
We will have them turn on their green button going forward.
I do have one question. Public art, is there money in the budget for public art, or what are we going to do for public art?
Yeah, so we have not, we haven't come up with the process yet, but we do think this is a fantastic candidate for public art, especially the main entry. In this particular, so you see the future artwork, but we also have Iowa State has a couple great examples of public art, which are like suspended sculptures, and this being a 2-story entry. So we definitely, that's part of what we're hoping to do with this. It's just, that's going to be a little behind some of these other processes.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I would say we will reconvene, as I said, for a closed session and the regular meeting at 4:45. Thank you.